Okay, so picture this. It's 2022. The market is absolutely tanking. Your portfolio is down 25%, 30%, at one point maybe 35%. And you're sitting there refreshing your brokerage app every morning like somehow the number is going to change if you look at it enough.
Your stomach is in knots. You can't sleep.
And finally, you just can't take it anymore. You sell. You move everything to cash. You tell yourself, I'll get back in when things calm down.
And then what happens? The market recovers.
And you missed it. Every single dollar of the recovery, gone, because you panicked.
Now, here's the part that really stings. When you first opened that brokerage account, you filled out a little questionnaire.
How would you feel if your portfolio dropped 20%? And you clicked moderately comfortable, maybe even very comfortable.
You lied. Not on purpose. You genuinely believed it. But you lied.
And that right there is the entire problem we're going to talk about today.
My name is John, and I spend way too much time thinking about investor psychology and why smart people make absolutely terrible financial decisions with their own money.
If you're someone who knows you should be investing for the long term, but keeps second-guessing yourself every time the market moves. If you're someone who knows you should be investing for the long term, but keeps second-guessing yourself every time the market moves.
Make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out.
All right, let's get into it. So here's the thing. The financial industry, and I say this with genuine frustration, has done a really poor job of educating investors on one of the most fundamental concepts in personal finance.
And that concept is the difference between risk tolerance and risk capacity. Most people have never even heard this distinction. And I'd argue it's one of the most important financial concepts you will ever learn. Because if you get this wrong, it doesn't matter how good your investment strategy is. It doesn't matter how diversified your portfolio is.
It doesn't matter if you've read every book by Bogle, Buffett, and Graham.
You will still make emotionally devastating decisions at the worst possible moments. Now, you might be thinking, wait, aren't they the same thing? Isn't risk just risk?
No, absolutely not.
And the difference between these two concepts could literally be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars over your investing lifetime.
Risk tolerance is psychological. It's emotional. It's the answer to the question, how much volatility can you stomach before you start making irrational decisions?
It's entirely about your feelings, your comfort level, your ability to watch a number go down without doing something stupid. Risk capacity is mathematical. It's structural. It's the answer to a completely different question. How much loss can your actual financial situation absorb without derailing your goals?
It has nothing to do with how you feel. It has everything to do with your income, your timeline, your expenses, your emergency fund, your debt, and the specific financial goals you're trying to reach.
Here's an analogy. Imagine you're training for a marathon.
Your tolerance for pain is how much physical discomfort you think you can handle during training.
Your capacity for training is whether your body, your schedule, your diet, and your recovery time actually support intense workouts.
But if you're sleeping 4 hours a night, working 60 hours a week, and eating garbage, your capacity for hard training is low, and ignoring that capacity will get you injured. Same thing in investing. Misaligning tolerance and capacity gets you financially injured. Here's what most people don't realize, and this is backed by data that genuinely shocked me when I first came across it.
According to research from Dalbar, they've been tracking investor behavior for decades. The average equity fund investor has historically underperformed the S&P 500 by somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 percentage points per year. Every year, consistently.
Think about what that means over time. A 3% annual gap sounds small.
But let's run the math. Say you invest $10,000 and the market returns 10% annually over 30 years. You end up with about $174,000. Now say you're the average investor, making emotionally driven decisions,
buying high, selling low, chasing performance, and you only capture 7% annually. After 30 years, you've got about $76,000.
That's a $98,000 difference on a $10,000 initial investment.
Nearly 100 grand in lost wealth, not because of fees, not because of bad stock picks, but because of behavioral mistakes rooted in misunderstanding your own relationship with risk.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting, because there are actually 4 possible combinations of tolerance and capacity, and 3 of them can seriously hurt you.
Combination 1. High tolerance, high capacity. This is the sweet spot. You can invest aggressively, stay the course, and compound wealth over decades. Combination 2. Low tolerance, high capacity. This is actually manageable. A portfolio you stick with beats a better portfolio you abandon every time.
Combination 3. Low tolerance, low capacity. This is the most honest combination.
A portfolio you stick with beats a better portfolio you abandon every time.
Combination 4. High tolerance, low capacity. This is the dangerous one.
This is the person who says, "Look, I don't care if my portfolio drops 50%. I'm in it for the long haul." And they genuinely believe that.
In a bull market, they feel invincible.
But here's the thing. If your capacity is low, if you don't have an adequate emergency fund, if you're carrying high-interest debt, if you have a major expense coming up in 2 or 3 years, then a serious market downturn doesn't just hurt your feelings.
It forces your hand. You don't just feel like selling. You have to sell because you need the money.
And selling during a downturn locks in losses in a way that's incredibly hard to recover from.
Now here's the psychological piece, and this is where I want to slow down, because understanding why our brains fail us here is genuinely important. There's a well-documented phenomenon in behavioral finance called the empathy gap, specifically the hot-cold empathy gap, studied extensively by behavioral economist George Lowenstein.
When you're sitting comfortably filling out a risk questionnaire on a Tuesday afternoon while the market is up 15% year-to-date, you are in a deeply cold emotional state. That future self doesn't exist. When the drawdown is actually happening, when you're watching real dollar amounts disappear from your real account, the emotional experience is completely different. This is compounded by something called loss aversion, the Nobel Prize-winning research from Kahneman and Tversky showing that losses feel roughly twice as painful as equivalent gains feel good. This is not a weakness. This is not a character flaw. This is how human brains are wired. The problem is that the financial system keeps treating risk assessment like a personality quiz instead of an engineering problem. All right, so let's get practical, because the whole point of understanding this is to actually do something different. Factor 1, time horizon. This is the most powerful lever you have. If you won't need this money for 25 or 30 years, short-term volatility is mathematically irrelevant. Factor 2, income stability. A tenured professor with a guaranteed salary has a fundamentally different capacity profile than a freelance contractor whose income swings 40% year to year. Factor 3, emergency reserves. The general guidance is 3 to 6 months of expenses in liquid, low-risk savings. Without it, you're one unexpected expense away from being a forced seller. Factor 4, debt load. Carrying high-interest debt while holding an aggressive investment portfolio is a mathematical contradiction.
If you're paying 22% APR on credit card debt, your investments need to return more than 22% just to break even on that capital allocation. And that's not a bet worth taking.
Factor 5, near-term financial obligations. Wedding in 18 months, down payment in 2 years, major home renovation. This money shouldn't be in the market at all, let alone in an aggressive portfolio. Okay, now the tolerance side. And look, here's my issue with standard risk questionnaires. They measure your stated preferences in a low-stress environment. They are not remotely predictive of your revealed preferences under pressure.
First, think back to the last real market correction you lived through. Not theoretically.
What did you actually do? Did you hold? Did you check your account obsessively? Did you reduce your position? Did you go to cash?
Second, calculate your actual dollar loss tolerance.
A 30% decline sounds manageable, but if your portfolio's too high,
Third, consider your monitoring habits. People who check their portfolio daily are, almost by definition, more likely to react emotionally to short-term movements.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, so what's the actual takeaway here? How do I use this? Your portfolio should be built around whichever is the binding constraint, your lower of the two factors, tolerance or capacity.
A portfolio you hold through downturns at 60% equities will dramatically outperform a portfolio you panic sell at 90% equities.
And here's something people really overlook. Your capacity is not fixed. It changes as your income grows, as your debt decreases, as your emergency fund grows, as your timeline evolves. A good rule of thumb, formally reassess your risk profile at major life transitions, new job, marriage, kids, home purchase, significant income change, any shift in your financial obligations.
Not because the market changed, because you changed.
Let me tell you about two hypothetical investors. Call them Jordan and Alex.
Jordan is 32, makes good money in tech, has a fully funded emergency reserve, no consumer debt, and a 30-year runway to retirement.
Your portfolio should be built around whichever is the binding constraint, your lower of the two factors, tolerance or capacity.
Jordan's tolerance is moderate, but Jordan's capacity is genuinely high. And because Jordan is holding more bonds than their situation requires, they're leaving significant long-term wealth on the table.
Now meet Alex. Alex also makes good money. Alex is bold. Alex loves markets. Alex has a 90% stock portfolio, also 32.
But Alex has almost no emergency fund, carries $15,000 in credit card debt, and is planning to buy a house in 2 years, with part of that down payment sitting in the market.
Alex's tolerance is high. Alex's capacity is low. And when the market dropped 30% in 2022, Alex didn't just feel bad, Alex needed to sell. The house timeline was real. The debt was still there. And Alex crystallized losses at the worst possible moment. Same age, same income level, dramatically different outcomes based entirely on understanding or failing to understand this one distinction.
Okay, let's land this plane with something concrete. This week, not someday, this week, I want you to do 3 things.
Step 1. Calculate your actual capacity score across the 5 factors I outlined. Timeline, income stability, emergency reserves, debt load, near-term obligations. Be honest. Write it down. Step 2. Look at your past behavior, not your stated preferences. What did you actually do in 2020? In 2022? If you made portfolio changes driven by fear, your behavioral tolerance is lower than you think. Acknowledge that without judgment and let it inform your allocation. Step 3. Check whether your current portfolio reflects the lower of your tolerance and capacity. If it doesn't, if you're holding more risk than either your gut or your financial foundation can genuinely support, have an honest conversation with yourself or with a fee-only financial advisor about rebalancing towards something you'll actually hold. The best investment portfolio is not the one with the highest theoretical expected return. It's the one you will stay invested in through the full market cycle, through the ugly corrections, through the scary headlines, through the moments when every instinct is telling you to do something. Understanding the difference between risk tolerance and risk capacity is how you build that portfolio. Understanding the difference between risk tolerance and risk capacity is how you build that portfolio. All right, if this video shifted something in how you think about risk, please hit that thumbs up button. Drop a comment below and tell me, which investor were you more like? Jordan leaving capacity on the table or Alex overestimating it? I'd genuinely love to know, and I read every single comment.
And if you want to go deeper on building an investment strategy that actually matches your real life, not just your best case assumptions about yourself, subscribe and check out the video linked right here.
I'll see you in the next one.